Hi and welcome back. Hi and welcome back. Let's continue on with chapter 2 where we're going to talk about negotiate we're continuing to talk about negotiation fundamentals. And this time we're going to talk about chapter 2, strategy and tactics of distributive bargaining. And again, we're talking about negotiations, the book Negotiations by Roy J. Lewitsky, Bruce Berry, and David Saunders. Okay, so let's look at, let's share my screen and take it from there. All right. So again, we're talking about negotiations, and this is section 1, negotiation fundamentals, chapter 2, strategy and tactics of distributive bargaining. So what is the distributing bargaining situation? Let's talk about that. The target point is a negotiator's optimum goal. And also it's called negotiator's aspiration. The target point is a negotiator's optimum goal. And it's also called a negotiator's aspiration. The resistance point is a negotiator's bottom line, also called a reservation price. The asking price is the initial price set by a seller. The buyer may counter with their initial offer. The spread between resistance points, the bargaining range, settlement range, or zone of potential agreement is important. When the buyer's resistance point is above the seller's, there is a positive bargaining range. Now, there's a role of alternatives to a negotiation agreement. And what will you do if no agreement is reached? So let's talk about that. What is the best alternative to a negotiated agreement? Banter. So what is the worst alternative to a negotiation agreement? Wata. So whatna, I'm sorry. Alternatives gives negotiators the power to walk away. Negotiators can set their goals higher or make fewer concessions. Good bargainers know their realistic alternatives before starting discussions and try to improve their alternatives during negotiations. Negotiators with strong banta usually make the first offer. Benefits of a good BATNA are the strongest when the bargaining range is small and negotiations are completely or unlikely to reach agreement. So strong banta can influence how negotiations unfold. So settlement point. The fundamental process of distributing bargaining is to reach a settlement within a positive bargaining range. Both sides want to claim as much as of the bargaining range as possible. Now, both parties know they may have to settle for less than they prefer, but hope it is better than their own resistance point. That resistance point is the point where I say, no, I can't do it. So both must believe that the settlement is the best they can get. It's very important, guys, both for the agreement and for the support of the agreement after negotiations end. Another factor affecting satisfaction with the agreement is whether the parties will see each other again. Those expecting future negotiations with the other party are less likely to use distributive bargaining. Why? Because I got to come back. I don't want to use up all my eggs at one time. So the bargaining mix is the package of issues for negotiations is the bargaining mix. Each item in the mix has its own starting, target, and resistance point. Some items are important for both parties, others only to one party. Now, negotiators need to understand what is important to them and to the other party, and to take this into account during the planning process. As the bargaining mix gets larger, there is more opportunity for trade-offs across issues. This part may require integrative negotiation strategies and tactics. So discovering the other party's resistance, we need to think about resistance points. We need to think about a couple of things, okay? The more you can learn about the other party's target resistance points, motives, and so on, the more likely you will settle favorably. And this happens with any relationship, guys, whether it be business, you just name it, you got to know what's going on. You got to find out the facts. At the same time, you do not want the other party to have certain information about you. Yeah, your resistance point, some of your targets, and any other information on the weaknesses is best kept concealed. Zip lips. You may want the other party to have certain information. Now, some factual and correct, some contrive to lead the other party to believe things favorable to you. Regardless, each side wants to obtain information and conceal that information. As a result, communication can become complex, conveyed in a type of code that evolves during the negotiation process. Now, influence the other party's resistance point. The resistance point is set by the value expected from a particular outcome. Therefore, the product of the worth and cost of its outcome. Now, a factor in shaping the other person's understanding of what is possible is the other's understanding of your own situation. The other party's understanding of your value for a particular outcome, costs you attached to delay, and your cost of ceasing negotiations. The four major ways to weaken the other party's resistance point include reduce the other party's estimate of your cost or delay or impasse, increase the other party's estimate of your cost of delay of impasse, reduce the other party's perception of the value of an issue, increase the other party's perception that you value an issue. So take care when trying to influence the other party's resistance point. Let's talk about tactical task. Within distributing bargaining, there are four important tactical tasks concerned with targets, resistance points, and the cost of terminating negotiations. Access the other party's target, resistance point, and cost of terminating negotiations. Manage the other party's impression of the negotiator's target and resistance point and cost of terminating negotiations. Modify the other party's perception of their own target and resistance point and cost of terminating negotiations. Manipulate the actual cost of delaying or terminating negotiations. Now, how do you assess the other party's position? Well, the negotiator could really pursue two general routes for information on the other party's target and resistance points. Indirect assessment, this is where they determine what information the other party is likely to use to target and points and see how they may be able to interpret this information. Now, a variety of information sources can be used for this direct assessment. Direct assessment could be sometimes the other parties will provide accurate information if in need of a quick settlement. If the other party is not so forthcoming, other methods can be used. Recruit spies, provoke the other party into an angry outburst, or stimulate aspiration and walk away and walk out of the negotiation. Manage the other party's impression of your position, really. You got to do that. And the way you do that is negotiators need to screen information about their own positions. Know yourself first. Understand yourself first. So concealment is the most general screening activity. When using a representative, calculated incompetence may be used. In team negotiations, channel communication through a spokesperson, and then present many items for negotiations, only a few of which are important. Negotiations can use direct action or alter impressions. Selective presentations reveal only the facts to support your case. Justify your positions in order to influence the other party's impressions and display emotional reaction to facts, proposals, and possible outcomes. Time and detail of presentation conveys importance the importance of an issue. Now, we want to use care when choosing to take direct action, all right? So, how do we modify others' perception of their own point? Now, a negotiator can alter the other party's impression of their own position by making outcomes less attractive or costs higher. Think about a house that you want to negotiate for, and you see that you can talk about other things. You can talk about the area if you know more about the area, and it kind of bring things up or down. So one approach is to interpret for the other party what the outcomes of their proposal would really be, maybe highlighting a previously overlooked item. Now, another approach to modifying the other's perception is to conceal information. Concealment strategies carry ethical hazards, and negotiators must ensure they negotiate in good faith. What about manipulating the cause of delay or termination? So there are three ways to manipulate the cause of delay. Plan disruptive action, which means public picketing, boycotting, or locking negotiators in a room until they reach agreement. All are forms of distributive action that increases costs. Form an alliance with other outsiders. Involve other parties who can somehow influence the outcome in the process. This will also increase the cost of delay. Manipulate the scheduling of negotiations. Use the negotiation schedule to increase time pressure. There are opportunities to increase or alter the timing of negotiations, and they vary widely, guys. Positions taken during a negotiation. So, effective distributive bargainers need to understand the process of taking positions during bargaining, including the following: the importance of opening offer and the opening stance, the role of making concessions throughout the negotiation process. Each party takes a position at the beginning of negotiations. Negotiation is irritative and provides opportunity for both sides to communicate information, and their positions may change. You must be sensitive to two factors when creating offers: value characteristics, or how much the issues and options of different issues are worth to the negotiator, and content characteristics involve the way the negotiation is constructed. So, what about the opening offers? Well, making or opening offers or opening stance. So let's discuss that for a little bit here. Well, we know that making the first offer is advantageous as it can anchor a negotiations. We know with better banter are more likely to offer first. Those better with banter, back and forth negotiations are better with making the first and more likely to make the first offer. Exaggerated opening offers give room for movement, sends the message of a long way, sends the message of a long way to go, and makes them doubt their open position. But it may be seen as too tough and rejected. For example, I'm notorious for offering people, if they tell me the house costs 500,000, I'm going to say, no, I'm going to offer somewhere between the 500,000 and the price it was last year. If last year's price was 350,000, well, Marilyn's probably going to offer 425. I'm not going to give you all of that. And so I'm going to start low, knowing what number I have in point to make this offer. Same way with cars, same thing with anything I do. I have to start at a certain point, but I know the ultimate point I want to get to. Now, an opening stance is the attitude a negotiator will adopt at the start of negotiations. Choose carefully, as opponents may respond in kind. Keep a consistent message with opening offer and stance. When the messages conflict, the other party may find them confusing. So, what opening offers meet counter offers define the bargaining range. So this is the initial concessions. Remember, opening offers meet the counter offers and define the bargaining range, after which is the time to hold firm or offer concessions. The first concession conveys a message of how you would proceed. Elements of the start of negotiations communicate intentions. An aggravated opening offer, a determined opening stance, and a very small initial concession signals a position of firmness. Research shows firm negotiators achieve better economic outcomes. There are several good reasons for flexible positioning. Taking different stances throughout a negotiation may reveal the other party's target may be over serving their reactions. Negotiators may use cooperation hoping for a better agreement. Flexibility keeps the negotiations proceeding. So the role of concessions are central to negotiation. Without them, negotiation would not exist. Negotiators generally resent a take it all or leave it approach, and parties feel better about settlement when the negotiation involved a progression of concessions rather than not. Intangible factors may be as important as tangible factors. Reciprocal concessions cannot be haphazardous. To encourage further concessions, negotiators may link their concessions to a prior concession made by the other. Because you have reduced your demand for X, I'm willing to concede to Y. So patterns of concession making during a negotiation contains valuable information, though not always easy to interpret. When successive concessions get smaller, the obvious message is that the concession maker's position is getting firmer. Consider two salesmen telling their clients they have no more concessions they can make. The believable salesman is the one who has made 4 previous concessions of decreasing value. The unbelievable salesman has made 3 previous concessions of the same value. In multi-issue negotiations, skilled negotiators will offer different forms of potential settlement worth about the same to them. So here's George's concession on the axle and Marlowe's concessions on the y-axle. And you can see at some point, X is making Y is making 4 concessions, and X is only making 2 concessions, and how that pattern of negotiation making for the 2 negotiators. So final offers, what are they? Eventually, a negotiator conveys a message that there is no more room for movement. The present offer is the final one. They may choose to let the absence of concessions be the signal. One way to convey the message is to make the last offer more substantial. This implies the negotiator is throwing in the remainder of the negotiating range. A personalized concession is also signals the last concession. So commitment. One definition is the taking of a bargaining position with some explicit or implicit pledge to future courses of action. The purpose is to remove ambiguity about the negotiator's intended course of action. They also reduce the other party's options and are designed to constrain the other party to a reduced portfolio of choices. Often interpreted now by the other party as a threat, some can be threats about others are statements, but others are statements of intent, leaving the responsibility for avoiding disaster in the hands of the other party. Now, they involve future promises. Because of their nature, they may require a follow-through and action. So there's tactical consideration in using commitment. Like many tools, commitments are two-edged. They exchange flexibility for certainty of action, but create difficulties if you want to move to a new position. Now, you should also make contingency plans for a graceful exit if you need it, but keep the contingency plan a secret. Commitments may be useful as the negotiator, but you want to prevent the other party from becoming committed. If they should take a committed position, keep open one or more ways for them to get out of the commitment. So, how do you establish commitment then? Well, there are three properties to a commitment statement: a high degree of finality, a high degree of specificity, and a clear statement of consequences. These are the three properties to a commitment statement. Public pronouncement. This increases potency and reduces chances of changes. Linking with the outside base. Link with outside allies and make it difficult to break the commitment. Increase the premise of demands. Repetition is one of the most powerful tools for prominence. Reinforcement, reinforce the threat or the promise. Simple, direct statements of demand are the most effective. Prevent the other from premature commitment. Now, it is important to prevent the other party from committing. People often commit when angry, so pay attention to anger levels. Deny your opponent the necessary time to make a commitment, or ignore or downplay a threat. It is important to prevent the other party from committing. There are times when it is to your advantage for the other party to become committed. When your opponent takes a position early, you may want to lock it in. This can be handled in one or two ways: by identifying the significance of the commitment when it is made, and by taking notes and keeping track of the other's statements. Now, how do you find ways to abandon the commitment? Well, plan a way out. Always come with a plan, all right? Simultaneously, plan a private way out of any commitment. Let it die silently. After some time, make a new proposal without mentioning the first. Restate the commitment. Restate the commitment in more general terms, changing some details to fit your current needs. Minimize the damage. If the other party backs off a committed position, help them save face. One way is to make a public statement about how the other party's move was a notable or higher outside cause. Closing the deal. You want to provide alternatives. Provide 2 or 3 alternative packages people like, because people really like choices, guys. Assume the close. Act as if the decision has already been made. Split the difference. When an agreement is closed, suggest the parties split the difference. Exploiting offers. This offer has a very tight deadline. Apply pressure to agree quickly. Sweeteners. Save a special concession for the close, but plan ahead. So, assessing the quality of the agreement. Objective outcomes. Include assessment of the agreement against the negotiator's target and resistance point. Now, another way is to compare against what the other party would have paid, but this information is not always available or is suspected. Subjective value, feelings about the outcome. Distributive fairness, feelings about the self. Did you lose face? Feelings about the process. Did the other party listen? Feelings about the relationship. Do you trust the other negotiator? There is no perfect assessment, but try your best. So there are also hardball tactics designed to pressure negotiators into doing things they normally would not do. Their presence signals a distributive bargaining approach. Their effect is often unproven and can backfire. Many find these techniques offensive. Many negotiators consider these tactics out of bounds, and the authors do not recommend using these tactics. It is important to understand hardball tactics and how they work, so you can recognize and deflect them when used against you. Now, dealing with typical hardball tactics is a good strategic response. Well, let's say this. A good strategic response is to identify the tactic quickly and understand how it works. Response will depend on your goals. Discuss them. Label the tactic and indicate you know what is going on. Ignore them. Not responding to a threat is often the best way of dealing with it. Respond in kind. You can always respond with a hardball tactic of your own. Co-op the other party. Try to befriend the other negotiator before they use such tactics on you. Now look at this. We have hardball tactics and their weakness. Good cop, bad cop, transparent and easily countered, difficult to enact. Low ball, high ball. The risk of using this is the other party may end talks. Bogey, deceptive and difficult to enact, may get trapped. Nimble. Many feel this is a bargaining in bad faith, may elicit feelings of revenge. Chicken, turns negotiators into serious game, difficult to avoid. Intimidation, may. So if you lose the low ball, high ball, intimidation, may use anger, legitimacy, or guilt. Teams may help. Bogey, aggressive. This is aggressive behavior. Halt negotiation. A team may help here too. Nibble. Nibble. Snow job. Ask questions and listen carefully to deflect this tactic. So distributive skills used in an integrative negotiation includes distributive bargaining skills are applicable in integrative negotiation claiming value. Applicable skills include the following: setting clear targets and resistance points, understanding and working to improve your banta, starting with a good opening offer and making appropriate concessions, managing the commitment process. And that's it for chapter 2. Wow, we have covered a lot in chapter 2. So I am hoping that I didn't bore you at all, but I want you to remember that the first negotiation has conceding more, but will and may not believe when they say they have given all they can. And the second negotiator clearly has not much more room to concede, as they are down to a $1 concession sometimes, or no dollar concession, no more dollars. So this has been negotiations. This was come from negotiation fundamentals, and this was chapter 2, strategies and tactics of distributive bargaining. Thanks for joining me. I look forward to our discussions in coffee and conversation. Take care.